This is a page from our Loki Portals product. Loki Portals is about helping our operators help their end users do self-care over the web. Two big things, which we learn largely through the service design practice we do on the consulting side. One is that it's really the customer admin who does most of the heavy lifting, resetting passwords, changing stuff. The second thing that we learned is that it's often 6 to 9 months from when they get the new service to when they actually want to go in and change something. So if they log in and they find this thing and it's 3 to 4 clicks to find what they want, a lot of the time they're going to bail on it and they're going to go call a call center, which is a result that nobody wants. So on the flip side, so the obvious thing is, hey, take things out, simplify it. Well, that wasn't really possible because our operators, bigger customers, the enterprises, they really wanted all these different settings and configurations somewhere because they felt that's important. So what we did was we created the page you see here, and this gets the 80th to 90th percentile of everything the user wants to do on a single page. So hey, if I want to reset Kelly Kapoor's password, I just pop in here and I do it. Previously that was 2 to 3 clicks to get there. Here's another thing we learned when we were out doing these service designs. Certain users, receptionists is a good example, have some very particular configurations they need on the phone to be effective. And they largely have those things in common, but they also need to be able to change them up a little bit around the edges to get what they want. So a set of stories we developed around this specifically for the receptionist as an example is, as a receptionist, I want to receive an out-of-the-box setup that's created against best practices so I don't have to set it all up by myself. So that's reasonable. We all like something that when we take it out of the box, it does what we want. And secondly, as a receptionist, I want to change the buttons on my phone so they do what I want, because yes, some of them are going to have some variation they want to be able to accommodate. The relatively, I suppose, obvious direction that we headed in to address these stories was to build a visual representation of the phone on the portal. So here are those stories layered in with some test cases where we supplemented those stories with additional details and ideas that we had come up with as we thought about the different audiences and scenarios. So the out-of-the-box scenario, for instance, well, it's going to be a product manager that creates those templates so that the phone works right for a receptionist, for an admin, and so forth out of the box. Well, they're usually non-technical or don't have access to the config files in the system, so they need a visual interface for updating those. And the receptionist who wants to change the buttons, well, there's a principle in UX called safe exploration. So we want to make sure that they can reset and go back to home base, for instance. So this is an example of how you supplement user stories with test cases to layer in additional detail and scenarios that you've thought through. And this is what it looks like today. I can go into these various buttons, update them, and so forth. Here's a bit of a counterexample to help illustrate the importance of this application of design thinking. The first product we built is called Prometheus, which I hadn't mentioned before. And Prometheus I built on a hunch. I got a little ahead of myself. I had this idea that, well, operators will want to see what services their users are using so that they can practice design thinking in that way and iterate on their portals, their offers, and generally tune and refine them. And it wasn't that operators didn't want to do that, but we rolled this thing out in the middle of the recession and it just wasn't on anyone's A-list. So we sell Prometheus pretty well now, but since we didn't go out and do that, we didn't hit on the kind of A-list priorities that customers were really focusing on in making purchases, and Prometheus initially was a very slow seller. It sells well now. We've layered in a lot of things that we learned customers really needed. If you're in B2B, you're probably part of a multi-vendor ecosystem, and as such, you certainly want to look out for opportunities in the ecosystem where architectures are changing, new facilities are available. So for example, we built that visual device management capability I mentioned before on top of a new developer framework that was available from the host platform BroadWorks. Loki BPM we built because we knew there was a great opportunity that was just starting to present itself where you could roll out a specialty application as a series of apps on top of a CRM application like Sugar CRM or Salesforce. In summary, if you're in B2B, design thinking is a fantastic capability. It's a great way to generate new ideas and to make sure that you're on the right track. And if you think about it, look at a company like Cisco, very infrastructure oriented. Their most powerful innovations early on were very technical, but probably their most enduring innovation is their certification and training program, the CCNA, CCDA, CCNP, so forth. And that was, I would say, probably a result of a lot of empathy with their users, that they needed training, that they wanted a certification to show that they knew what they knew. And that's been terrific for Cisco in terms of retention. I used to sit around with my colleagues and brainstorm ideas for new products, and it was always okay at best. Once I started going out and observing users and practicing design thinking, there were just constantly all sorts of ideas leaping out at me.